All right, guys, I want to share with you what you can be kind of prioritizing if you're someone who is struggling with a series of injuries. You're someone who has just had a bit of a run of bad luck. You've had a hip thing, a knee thing, an ankle thing. It's kind of like almost like a cyclical nature to it, where one leads into another, and you've been around the houses. You've done everything you think you should be doing to kind of resolve this. And I'm going to say it from the start, guys. There is still a lot of BS within the health professional community where we are still seeing people treating the symptoms and not the problem. What I want to do today, guys, is start to help you unpack the problem there. And you're not being asked the right questions. And I want us to kind of go through some of these kind of these key questions that can really help you understand the nature of why these symptoms are occurring, and also how you can then prevent them in the future. It's based on like education, right? And education as it stands is very much kind of treat the symptoms. Like what have we got in front of us? What are we dealing with? What are we working with? Right, let's treat that. Let's deal with that. And you can understand it to a point, but the human body doesn't work that way. Like the way it tolerates work, training, like just day-to-day activity, it doesn't work in isolation. It never does, never will. And so to think that one exercise, one drill, one massage, one treatment is going to solve a potential systemic issue. So, so if you're dealing with the left side issue where sometimes it's a hip, sometimes it's a knee, sometimes it's an ankle, like you're dealing with there's a synergistic kind of relationship that obviously the whole left-hand side of your body is having. And depending on the type of person you are, the history you've had, the sports that you've played, the injuries that you've had before this, that your body's got to cry out in its kind of the weakest area. And for a lot of people, it's patellofemoral pain, so knee pain. It could be sacroiliac pain. It could be ankle issues, calf issues. But these are just stress points. These are often just points where the body is just breaking down the most. But that doesn't mean that we then go away and we work on calf raises and we just work on isolating the hamstring on its own, or we just work on lower back mobility exercises. No, it's a much bigger picture to this. And I know you know this. I actually know, because I have these conversations with yourselves. Like, you are aware that you feel like it's a bigger thing happening here, but because you're having these these reoccurring pain points, symptoms in the knee, in the ankle, in the hip, whatever, you kind of you follow suit. You kind of go, yeah, okay, well, it hurts there, so if I just start working that area, then that might help. Now, don't get me wrong. I never want to play down the importance of understanding the nature of what we're dealing with, the injury. But if there's an inflammation, there is a bone stress injury potentially to a certain area. Like that still doesn't mean that is the only thing we need to be working on and focusing on. But why did that issue happen in the first place? What is the biomechanical breakdown that's led to these symptoms, to this injury? And this is the kind of conversations you're not having. And I don't think you're having enough. And these are the conversations you want to be having with yourself. If you're someone who's struggling with a knee issue, a reoccurring knee issue, and it's become your thing, like an ankle thing, a hip thing, and you're fed up with hearing just like being treated with the symptoms and being given one-dimensional kind of exercises every now and again, take that frustration and use it as motivation to understand the why better. And I'm going to ask you probably, what I'd always challenge you on is your levels of athleticism. Okay. So when you're working with someone who's in pain, who's injured, like my wife being, she spent years working at her degree as a sports therapist. I've worked with physios my entire career, and there's a level of detail that I don't use when it comes to sports injuries sometimes, because once I understand the nature of what we're working with, I then take a broader lens and I go, right, what is this person's abilities look like? What does their levels of athleticism look like? Whether they're 17 or they're 77, how well do they stand on two legs? How well do they, balance them through one leg versus another? How well do they propriocept coordinate? How well do they land and control their force that they can apply through their body? As soon as you start looking at these kind of global, bigger movement patterns within someone, the evidence starts to kind of show itself. Like you start to see the why behind the reasons why. And with so many endurance-based athletes, people who love to run, ride, etc., there are dominances, there are imbalances, there is an overload created through the high volume nature of the training program that they're following. So what you're trying to do when you're working with someone who is struggling with lots of injuries is like, right, this person is being overloaded in these said areas, the knee, the hip, the ankle. How can we bring better balance to this body? And then we start to unpack it. We look at these levels of athleticism. And as I said, you start to go, right, what does that person look like when they squat? What does that person look like when they pick something up? Is there relative symmetry in their mechanics? Or do they sort of sit more on one hip? When you start to look at their single leg strength, do they have obvious dominances? Do they have like reckless confidence performing single leg squats and single leg hamstring bridges on one leg versus not a lot of confidence on the other leg? Like, when you ask them to jump and land, can they jump up and down on the spot confidently, with power, with explosion, with control? Can they do that with single leg? Can they jump and land with the single leg on both sides? How much power? How much control do they have? Guys, these types of questions or these types of tests or just these types of exercises that you're not being asked. You're just being poked, prodded, scanned, treated, and sent out the door. That's not going to solve that's going to potentially solve the symptoms in the short term, but you're not going to be solving that dysfunction, that physical dysfunction that you're dealing with. And not to overplay it, or over dramatize it, but there is a little bit of a dysfunction, right? Like, and that just little dysfunction, those little imbalances, those little areas of weakness become monsters when you start to add volume and speed and intensity to your body. And this is what we see on the time and time again with people, where they're okay, they kind of get away with it, and then they suddenly start to break down with longer term tendinopathies, longer term bone stress injuries, longer periods of time not being able to train it the way they want to, because there's a lack of balance within that body. So what I'm saying to you guys is, if you are stuck in this reoccurring loop, go back to your levels of athleticism, and your ability to jump and land, to be able to load your single leg with confidence and control. Have good levels of conditioning in your major muscle groups, quads, hamstrings, glutes. What does that mean? 20 reps for fun on each leg, single leg squat, single leg hamstring bridge, single leg calf raise. Can you jump and land on both legs with absolute reckless confidence? Like, you're not hesitating, you're not fearful, you're just like, yeah, jump off that, no problem, land on one leg, land on the other. 80 years old, you can still be doing that. Like, don't tell me age is an issue. You expect your body to run the trails, to be out there for 10 hours plus. You expect your body to be able to run potentially sub 25K runs. Like, you have that expectation already. Apply that same level of expectation to your levels of strength and conditioning. As soon as you do that, I can promise you, guys, this is the basis of how we work with people at Strength Endurance. Is we remove the bullshit. We remove all the treatments, the therapies, and go, right, just show us how you move. And as soon as you see yourself move, you go, okay, I'm starting to break down here. I can see where I'm not standing to full extension there. I can see where I'm starting to collapse. I can see that is your buy-in to go, right, I need to go away and work on developing those major muscle groups. I need to put more confidence into the basic mechanism of jumping and landing with confidence again. It should baffle you that if you're a runner and you want to be a run further, run faster, but yet you have doubt in your ability to perform 10, 15 single leg squats. You doubt whether you can be able to perform a single leg hop 1, 2, 3 times in a row without falling over, without losing control. You shouldn't have any doubts with those types of exercises. They are foundational base strength levels that you want to be able to maintain until you die. And if you don't, that's the questions that you're not being asked. So in your next time you're in front of a physio, like or when you're in front of a physical therapist, or you're in front of your coach, if you're struggling with certain things, like, that's how we unpack it. We unpack you from a physiological standpoint. We look at your levels of strength and conditioning, because that's where the evidence is going to be. Like, the symptoms are always going to be there. They're always going to jump around. They're always going to come through, because when you add load, you add intensity, add volume, those symptoms will rear their ugly head in lots of different ways, and they will fluctuate. There'll be days when you feel like you've got no knee pain, and other days you've got back of the knee pain, you've got hamstring issues, you've got quad issues, you've got calf issues. Again, the entire health industry is built upon feeding these types of symptoms, nurturing these types of symptoms. Squash these symptoms by actually getting on top of your levels of athleticism, developing your levels of strength and conditioning. Understand that your body doesn't work in isolation. Yes, you've got a hip flexor thing. Okay, why is that hip flexor being overloaded? Because you have no arse. You've got no hamstrings, you've got no glutes. Why is my knee hurting? Well, it's probably because you can't perform more than 10 single leg hamstring bridges without cramping. You have no conditioning in one of the major muscle groups of your leg. Why are my calves always blowing up? And why have I always got reoccurring calf issues? Because you have no posterior chain strength. You have very little confidence in your single leg strength. Why is my plantar fascia or my Achilles or my foot always in pain and niggly? It's because you overload it. Because again, you don't have enough depth of strength and conditioning further up the chain. If I looked into your calves, into your hamstrings, into your quads, into your glutes, into your core stability, what am I going to find? I'm probably going to find big areas that you're weak in. Those weak links are the why behind the reason why we are overloading your shins, your calves, your Achilles, whatever you're dealing with. You're being bullshitted a lot of the time. An orthotic, a bunch of calf exercises, like whatever you're kind of working with, like keep coming back to your body, your chassis, like strip back all the products, all the services. All I think about is the person's body that I'm working with. Is it fueled well enough? Is it recovered well enough? Is it strong enough? Okay, well, this person wants to run a 200 miler. The person wants to run a 5K for the first time. Whatever it is, is this body capable of tolerating that type of work? When we place stress on that body, how is it going? And when we stress test it, where are those stress points? Where are we going to start to see that body break down? This is how I want you to be thinking about navigating injury, because it doesn't seem to be the case. We're still living in a culture where there's a lot of business built around treating symptoms, not actually solving the problems. And the problems is that it comes right back down to your levels of athleticism, and they won't be great after a time, right? As we age, as we pick up injury, as we step away from a sport, step back into a sport, we have children, go through the menopause. There's so many different phases of our life that will compromise our levels of athleticism. But you can build those back. You can build that confidence back by stripping the bullshit back and going, right, how do I move? How confident am I? How much levels of strength and conditioning do I have in all my major muscle groups? Upper body, lower body, core, glutes, hamstrings, quads. We can define those. We can literally bully and tactically work on each of those areas on a week-to-week basis. This, guys, is how you move past being stuck with injury. I do this every single day with clients that we work with. I've got people who have spent years going around in circles, having every consultation under the sun, every treatment under the sun, but they've never had the right line of conversation with someone who's going to say, right, it's nothing to do with your knee. It's all to do with your lack of confidence in your ability to jump, land. You don't have enough conditioning in those major muscle groups to support that knee, and that knee is just crying out because it's the focal point that your body's chosen. Giving someone that power to go, right, just go away. We're going to look after that knee, but we're going to work our butts off literally to develop more glute strength, hamstring strength. We're going to work on the single leg strength. We're going to work on building back your confidence in being able to jump and land again. And this is post significant injury sometimes, guys. But again, the whole thing is about rebuilding your body back to a level of athleticism which it can just tolerate whatever you want to throw at it. But it's going to take this kind of level of thinking where you're stepping back from the symptoms and going, right, why does this constantly happen? And it's this repetitive nature of the sports that you play, the repetitive nature of the positions you hold on a day-to-day basis. But it's compounded by the fact that you're not working on those major muscle groups. This is what we've got to be thinking about, because this is how you move the needle. This is how you kind of flip that narrative so quickly, because you invest time and effort into some of those big areas and it just shifts it. It just shifts it. And you suddenly are less symptom free. And people are like, wow, I don't know how I did that. But it's because you offloaded those problem areas. All right. So that's how I really want you to think. When you pick up these injuries, unpack it. Immediately start unpacking it. Why? Where potentially do I not have enough right now? Where am I not creating enough support structure, infrastructure to support that knee, that ankle, that hip? Maybe I haven't developed enough tolerance in those areas. What do I need? What drills, exercises, habits could I be bringing into my week that I can be working and developing more depth of conditioning and strength in those areas? That, guys, is how you unpack some of the most reoccurring, aggravating, annoying injuries known to man. But it's because we're not focusing on the symptoms. We're focusing on the problem. And our bodies do not work in isolation. They work as a wonderful cohesive unit. And you've just got to know how to play the game. Once you do, you'll always have the power to be able to dictate this for long into the future. All right, guys. Any questions? Let me know.